Part 1. A Night Out. Emily had always cherished her evenings out with friends. Living in Munich, where vibrant nightlife danced alongside centuries-old architecture, she often found herself caught up in the city's charm. Tonight was no different. After a long week at work, she joined her friends at a cozy bar known for its rustic decor and warm atmosphere. They laughed, reminisced, and clinked glasses, enjoying each other's company late into the night. As the clock inched towards midnight, Emily felt a twinge of reality creeping in. She glanced outside to see the once bustling street emptying out. The chill of autumn seeped through the glass, prompting her to wrap her scarf tighter around her neck. She reluctantly hugged her friends goodbye and stepped out into the crisp night air, her breath visible in the cold. Her car was parked a few blocks away, under a flickering street lamp that barely lit the sidewalk. As she walked, the cobblestones beneath her feet echoed with each step, and the distant sounds of the city faded, leaving an unsettling silence in their wake. She quickened her pace, unease settling in her stomach, but pushed the thought aside. It was late. It was just her imagination. When she reached her car, she fumbled with the keys, her fingers trembling slightly. The comforting familiarity of her vehicle made her feel safer. She started the engine and adjusted the rearview mirror, noticing the empty street behind her. Just as she began to pull away, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Part 2. The followed initially, she thought nothing of it. The car behind her could be going anywhere. But as she navigated through the winding streets, she noticed that it was keeping pace with her, too close for comfort. Panic began to rise within her, but she shook it off, convincing herself it was just another driver heading home. Minutes passed and the other car continued to follow, its headlights glaring ominously in her mirrors. Emily's heart raced as she took a few sharp turns, hoping to lose the vehicle. Instead, it remained on her tail, a persistent shadow that refused to vanish. Anxiety clawed at her mind as she realized that the driver was intentionally keeping close, flashing their high beams intermittently. With her mind racing, Emily pushed the gas pedal down, her car speeding through the darkened streets. She turned onto a quieter road, her palms sweaty against the steering wheel. The headlights stayed firmly behind her, their proximity a suffocating presence. Her heart thudded in her chest as she navigated the labyrinth of the city, desperate to find safety. Part 3. The Chase. As she approached a fork in the road, Emily's instincts kicked in. She took a sharp left, her tires squealing against the wet pavement. The other car responded, its headlights illuminating her rearview mirror in a blinding glare. Her breath quickened, fear paralyzing her thoughts as she realized she had to get home. Rounding the final corner, she saw her street up ahead, a beacon of safety. She barreled into her driveway, barely allowing the engine to come to a complete stop before throwing the car into park. Panic surged through her as she jumped out, her heart racing as she dashed toward the front door. But as she sprinted, she caught a glimpse of the other car skidding to a stop behind her. The driver leaped out, a tall figure silhouetted against the night. Emily fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She could hear the man shouting, but his words were drowned out by the adrenaline pumping in her ears. She threw open the door and slammed it shut, locking it behind her. She could still hear the pounding on the door, frantic and urgent. The voice outside grew louder, pleading, "Please, I'm trying to help you." Part 4. The police arrive. Her heart raced as she scrambled for her phone, dialing the police in a panic. "I'm being followed. Someone is trying to get into my house," she cried, her voice trembling. "Stay on the line, ma'am. Help is on the way," the operator assured her. With shaky hands, she peered through the peephole, heart hammering in her chest. The man stood there, his face twisted in concern rather than malice. He kept glancing at her car, then back at the door, desperation in his eyes. The sound of sirens finally broke the night's silence, and relief washed over her. The police arrived swiftly, their blue lights casting a glow through her window. She opened the door just enough to see the officers approaching the man, speaking to him in low tones. After a moment, one of the officers approached Emily. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" he asked, his tone calm but serious. I don't know. I was driving home, and he was following me." I thought he was going to hurt me, she stammered, her fear still palpable. The officer glanced back at the man, who was now animatedly explaining himself to another officer. The man wasn't following you to harm you. He was trying. To warn you, he saw someone in your back seat. Emily's breath caught in her throat. What? In my car? Part 5. The realization. Yes, ma'am. He was trying to get your attention to let you know, the officer replied. There was someone hiding in your back seat while you were driving. We need to check your vehicle. Shock coursed through her veins as she stumbled back, the horror of his words sinking in. She felt the room spin around her mind racing through all the moments she had felt unease while driving. Had someone been there, silently watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike? The officers quickly moved to her car, examining it carefully. She could see them speaking to each other, their expressions serious. A few moments later, one of the officers returned, his face grim. We found someone in the back seat, ma'am. He's been detained, he said, his voice steady. You're safe now. The man who had been chasing her was not her enemy after all. He had been her savior. Emily felt a wave of relief mixed with nausea. The reality of the situation was almost too much to bear. Part 6. The Aftermath. After the chaos settled, Emily sat on her couch, the police officers having left her with a few assurances and a greater understanding of her situation. The adrenaline slowly faded, replaced by a heavy fatigue. She replayed the events of the night over and over in her mind, her heart still racing at the thought of what could have happened. Days turned into weeks, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Each time she drove her car, she glanced nervously into the back seat, half expecting to see a figure lurking there. It wasn't just the fear of that night that haunted her. It was the knowledge that danger could hide in the most unexpected places. She found herself taking different routes home, avoiding the darkened streets that had once felt so familiar. Friends and family expressed concern, urging her to talk about what had happened, but she often brushed them off, unable to relive the horror of that night. One night, as she lay in bed, she heard a sound outside, an engine rumbling, headlights sweeping across her bedroom wall. Her heart leaped into her throat, and she crept to the window, peering out into the darkness. It was just a passing car, but the fear had returned, a shadow that loomed over her every move. Part 7. The Healing. In the months that followed, Emily sought help to cope with her trauma. Therapy sessions helped her piece together the fragments of that night, to untangle the anxiety that had taken root in her mind. She learned breathing exercises, how to ground herself in moments of panic, and slowly she began to reclaim her sense of safety. One day, as spring arrived and the air grew warmer, she decided it was time to confront her fears. She got into her car, her heart pounding as she turned the key in the ignition. The engine purred to life, and she felt a rush of adrenaline. With determination, she drove through the streets, the sunlight pouring in through the windows, illuminating the shadows that had haunted her. She took deep breaths, reminding herself that she was in control, that she had survived. As she drove, she passed the bar where she had spent so many happy evenings. She parked and stepped inside, taking a deep breath of the familiar atmosphere. The laughter and chatter felt like a balm to her soul, easing the tension she had carried for so long. Part 8. Moving Forward. Emily made a pact with herself that night. She would not let fear dictate her life. She could not change what had happened, but she could choose how to respond. Over time, she regained her confidence, learning to trust herself again. While the memory of that terrifying night would always remain, it transformed into a lesson about vigilance and the importance of being aware of her surroundings. As she continued to navigate her life in Munich, Emily found solace in the fact that she had faced her fears head-on. She understood that while the world could be a dark and unpredictable place, it was also filled with light and kindness, just waiting to be discovered.